Welcome to week 5, and congratulations on making it past the halfway point. We're going to start in our text, chapter 6. I love the quote at the beginning in our text from J. Baer. J. Baer says, "Prove your point with numbers, but make sure you attempt to do so with numbers that matter." Reminds me of another quote by sociologist William Bruce Cannon. He wrote, "Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted." If you've taken a qualitative research course, you can understand why this is true. The point is that we get buried in data sometimes. We need to make sure that that data is helpful. Actionable intelligence is what we refer to it in the military. The same is true in the civilian world in terms of all the information that we get. We'll talk a little bit more about that this week. Your author also writes in chapter 6 that academic rigor is beginning to come to social media research through transparency of methods. However, there are still these cool new online tools that kind of distract us more than scientific methods, and that those cool online tools have so far been the driving force behind proprietary social media. In other words, be careful not to chase after every shiny new object that comes down the pike. I'm sure you're a victim, I know I am, of something that looks cool and might help our organization. Step back, take a deep breath, and make sure that this new tool is really good for its impact, not necessarily just because it's new and cool looking. Now, as we've discussed before, there's often a request for social media return on investment, or ROI. We'll talk a little bit more about that this week in chapter 6. It's fine to ask for ROI, I encourage it, but we also need to consider the COI, or cost of ignoring social media. This could include missed opportunities to engage with influencers, ignorance of the overall competitive environment, or simply not knowing what your consumers are saying about your brand, both positive and negative. And this is a key point about social media. It's not about one-way communication. We're putting out our message and hoping that people share and like and retweet and all that. Don't forget that social media gives you a powerful opportunity to gain some important insights just by listening. What are your customers saying? Before the age of social media, they would probably be saying those things to neighbors, friends, family. We would never know about it. Now they're sharing them with those same groups of people and others via social media. They're tagging you or calling you out on social media. It's important that you listen as well as actively speak through social media. That listening can provide some very important information. So if you're not already doing that as part of your social media strategy, I encourage you to do so. Our author provides some good advice in chapter 6, which he labels see, say, feel, do. It's pretty simple, yet it also offers a pretty powerful and methodical way to approach social media analytics. So I recommend that you read that and take some of that back with you to your organization. I think there's some good tips in there in terms of how we can approach social media analytics. Now, our author also offers some good insights, noting that the greatest obstacle to determining ROI, or return on investment, doesn't happen on the back end. Once you've collected mounds of user engagement data like retweets, bounce rates, number of likes and shares, things like that, the main obstacle to determining ROI comes from a failure to define the R, or return, on the front end. What is the return you're trying to create? Without knowing what you're trying to accomplish through social media, it's impossible to measure your success. Read that quote, write it down, use it the next time someone asks for ROI. And again, as I stated earlier, ROI is fine, just make sure that you're focusing on the right R, the right return that's aligned with your organizational objectives. There's also some good information about measuring what matters on our websites, which leads to a better understanding of things like search engine optimization, or SEO, It's also a good reminder that the website's not going away, and your website has not lost importance. In fact, it's just as important as it ever was, because it's a key part of your strategic communication, even in the age of social media. A good part of what you send out via social media, a good part of that interaction, will refer people back to your website. So make sure that you don't abandon the website and look for opportunities to keep that website fresh and accessible for your audience. There's things that you'll want to pay attention to, especially as we move into a more mobile world. Your authors don't spend a lot of time discussing it, but there's some tips that you'll want to look at if you're responsible for your website in terms of mobile optimization and also mobile responsiveness, the way in which your website renders when it's viewed from a tablet or a phone. So look into that. It's important because if you're engaging your audiences on social media, they're also linking to your website, things like that. Now, as you review the different ways to measure social media, remember, regardless of what communication tool we're using, we should always be looking for ways to improve trust and influence to help meet our organizational objectives. It's true long before social media was even a term. It'll be true long after social media is no longer the new media and we moved on to something else. That trust and influence is key. Finally, if you're not already familiar with the terms such as earned media, paid media, owned media, and shared media, familiarize yourself with those terms. It'll help as we go through this chapter and others in terms of the interaction that those have. I encourage you to review those. The simple way to think about this is that your earned media is public relations. We're trying to get media. We're earning media's trust to cover our organization. Paid media, you're paying someone to advertise, okay? And owned media, that's what we control, websites, blogs, things like that. And then shared media, which is what we're describing as social media. We want to share that communication with others. That's it for now. As always, stay ahead with your assignments, stay engaged in the discussion board, and enjoy this time of learning.